Welcome to r/Reddit Revenge. This is a story of someone getting back at someone with revenge after being wronged. And today we have 4 great stories. So subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story. Junior lawyer exacts a pro revenge on his manipulative boss by orchestrating a hilarious prank involving a forged memo. The second story. Nursing student turns the tables on an unfair instructor by exposing their mistake, leading to the instructor's termination. The third story. My neighbors mistakenly called the fire department on my small gathering around the fire, so I decided to start 2 more fires and continue the fun late into the night. And the first story is a lawyer's pro-revenge on his boss. This opinion is SH, my boss told me. He'd been a lawyer for 3 years, and the firm assigned me to him for training, to show me junior counsel how to be a litigator. I disliked my boss for a number of reasons. He knew no law, and he expressed himself badly in writing. For litigator, that's like strike 1 and 2 right there, and strike 3 was this: he had no balls. He was actually scared of going to court. I noticed this when he took me to assignment court one day, and when it was his turn to speak, his hands were shaking. He was scared. In effing assignment court, where all you do is set a trial date. "What's wrong with what I wrote?" I said. "Not what I asked for," he said, turning away. But when I checked the memo he'd emailed me 2 weeks earlier, I saw that the opinion I wrote was exactly what he asked for. I knew what was up. He was going to delete my dockets for writing the memo and then claim he did it himself, thus leaving quite a bit short of my docketing quota for the month. I knew that he would do this to me, because he'd done this before. I knew that my memo would wind up on a partner's desk without my name on it. I knew that for a fact because the firm I worked at was one of the first in the city to have a really good internal network. We were using email for internal communications before the internet became a thing. So the firm was way ahead in terms of technology, but not in terms of security. And not long after I joined the firm, I learned how to surf away on the firm's hard drive and find interesting things, like evidence that my boss was plagiarizing my work. My boss was the very model of the young downtown lawyer. His perfect shoes always gleamed. He wore bespoke suits because he came from money. Everyone just took it for granted that he was on the partner track. I, on the other hand, was well on my way to nowhere special, so maybe he thought it was okay to F with me. If so, that was a big mistake on his part. I didn't like having my billable hours F'd with. I seriously resented it, because I was already being targeted as one of the juniors who doesn't docket as much as he should, and I was getting pushback from the partner who headed our team. I told the partner what was going on, but he didn't care. It was like being back in middle school and showing up in the office with bruises on my face, and the principal saying boys will be boys, and sending me on my way. "You'll just have to work harder or smarter," the partner said when I reported the latest BS thing my boss did to me. I couldn't work harder. I was doing the usual 6 days a week lawyers downtown are forced to do, but I could work smarter, and that night I thought up a plan. Christmas was coming, and I thought I'd give my boss a little present. It landed on his desk on December 24th, in the form of a memo purporting to be from the partner that my boss reported to. The partner was an old guy, and not really on board with emails and computers, so he did everything old school on paper. So when my boss came on December 24th and saw a memo on his desk from the partner with a legal research assignment, that wasn't unusual. The memo was drafted in the usual form that the partner used, because of course I had taken great pains to make sure that it looked authentic. My boss walked over to the little cubicles where the juniors worked and gave me the same memo. Except his secretary had retyped it, so now the assignment was from him to me, instead of from the partner to my boss. The assignment was difficult, requiring me to do a deep dive into admiralty law, its relationship to the common law, combined with a constitutional division of powers question. "But this is a huge assignment," I whined, "and I'm gonna be away. Can't you get someone else to do it? Is it really urgent?" The memo I'd forged to my boss stressed how totally urgent the situation was, but there was no way my boss could double-check with the partner, because the partner left the day before on vacation. That's why I'd waited until December 24th. "No can do," my boss said. "This is a big deal. Just let HR know. Maybe they'll give you time and a half or something." He turned his back and walked away, thinking he had ruined my holidays. But he was mistaken. You see, I'd written a paper for a 3rd-year course that was basically the same thing as the research assignment in the memo. So the only work I had to do was to find the old floppy disk with the draft on it, fiddle with it a bit, and voila, A very detailed and very long memo on an obscure point of Admiralty law, with references starting back to Lord Coke's day. So I put the memo together and took my holidays as planned. I wasn't traveling anywhere, because I had no money, but I saw my family and stayed in town, and I made a point of dropping by the office during the holidays, sending an email or two, establishing that I was around, and docketing all my time for the huge amount of research I was allegedly doing. So the holidays end, and I'm sitting in my SH little cubicle with a huge stack of work to do, and my boss comes up to me, in one of his bespoke suits with a gold tie pin and cufflinks to match. He was wearing a gold watch too. He was dressed up even for him, trying to make an impression of some kind. "Where's that memo? You were supposed to have it on my desk when I got back. I'm going into a meeting at noon." "Just finished it this morning," I said, handing him the lengthy memo that was still warm from the printer. My boss took the memo in his hands and felt its heft, then he smiled. Then he turned and walked away without a word. Just before lunch, I heard a commotion down the hall. It was a pretty loud commotion as such things go. A loud F, and then a door was flung open. It was the partner, and he was screaming for my boss to get his A into his office now, right now, as in immediately. I had the pleasure of watching my boss scramble down the hall. "Just what the effing F is this?" the partner said, standing in the doorway to his office, and holding my handiwork at arm's length with his thumb and index finger, as if he were afraid that handling it would soil him. My boss mumbled something, and then the partner ushered him inside. I heard more shouting, then the sound of muffled excuses, and then more shouting from the partner. Then the door flung open again. "Called in the 90s, get your A in here too," the partner said, and I got my A in there pronto. "Did you write this effing memo?" the partner said. I took it from him and looked it over. "I wrote it. The cover page has been changed to remove my name, but other than that, it's mine. I spent all Christmas on it. Is there something wrong with it?" The partner exploded. "Is there something wrong with it? Something wrong? I'll tell you what's wrong with it. It's effing useless. Totally useless." I explained that I'd followed my boss's instructions to the letter, and that I'd docketed more than 100 hours on it. At this, the partner really went nuts, and told me to go back to my desk and fetch him the memo from my boss. I brought it to him, and when he read it, his face went red. He told me I could leave, and I hauled my A out of there. From my little cubicle, I wasn't close enough to hear the full chewing out my boss got, but I heard the details through the grapevine over the next few days, about how the partners were seriously peeved that my boss had wasted over 100 hours of a junior's time on a useless task that was obviously a prank, and how had my boss not realized that he was being pranked? Was he an idiot? I wasn't blamed at all, of course. I had been working under my boss's close supervision. My boss didn't get fired, but he was reprimanded, and there were some good outcomes for me. For one thing, the partner told me to send him a copy of any memos I wrote for my boss, and that ended him taking credit for my work. My boss also stopped deleting my dockets for my research. Plus, I got a belated Christmas bonus for having to give up on my alleged vacation to write the stupid memo. I really hated working in that place, but whenever times were tough, I'd think back to the case of the forged memo, and that always brought a smile to my face. Edit. The revenge is that my boss was setting me up to get fired by stealing my dockets, i.e. the time I recorded each month for work I did, and by which I was judged at the firm. He was also taking credit for my work. He was a star at the firm and I was a loser, so I set him up to look like a complete idiot to the partner he reported to, and it worked very well. Exceeded my expectations, in fact. Plus 0 blowback to me. I only to the revenge and prank thing when I'm certain it won't trace back to me. In this case, I was sure to get away with it because it made it look like I was the victim, when in fact the victim was my boss. We have to deal with all kinds of people at work, sometimes even those who use their position to exert pressure and manipulate. However, the protagonist of this story turned out to be a real master at justifying himself from such pressure. The ability to carefully prepare a revenge plan and implement it impressed me. He used his intelligence and knowledge to protect his interests and eventually won. This story teaches us not only about professional skills and talent, but also that sometimes you need to be brave and resilient to defend your rights and positions. If you're careful and smart, you can survive even in a difficult work environment. The protagonist proved this, and his story always reminds us that sometimes you have to stand up for yourself and use your skills and resources to achieve justice. Lawyers prank each other by leaving forged to-do lists on each other's desks. The next story is, nursing instructor fails me unnecessarily, so I get him fired. I was at the end of my first of 3-year nursing program, and I got assigned a nurse instructor who had a background in ICU. He had extremely high standards and expected way more from us than should be expected from students with such little clinical experience. We had only just started clinicals in term 2, and he would be asking me questions about the patient's PTT, and what that means in regard to the clotting cascade, a concept we hadn't even learned yet. One day, the nurse I was assigned to gave our patient too much IV pain medication, and her oxygen levels started dropping. I told the nurse and she ended up giving her Narcan, and the patient jolted awake screaming from the pain of her double knee replacement. My instructor said I was not performing well. I was too anxious given the situation, and he sent me home from clinical. The next week we had a meeting where he informed me I was at risk of failing. However, throughout the rest of the term, I went to open lab every week and studied my butt off. By the end of term, he said I've worked really hard and he's going to pass me. Except he had talked so much SH about me to the other instructors, they held a vote and decided I should fail due to these safety concerns. I then get pulled out of my cohort and have to wait for 9 months to get back in. Devastating. During my time off, I get an email from my old instructor. The email contained a final evaluation for another student in his current term. Her name was very similar to mine, and he sent it to me by mistake. I forwarded the email to the dean, and he's no longer working for the institution. One mistake and you're out, hey? Oh, the irony. Cue evil laugh. It's hard to imagine how difficult it was for the author to go through this period of non-recognition and pressure, but she did not submit to the circumstances and found a way to protect her interests. This story also shows that sometimes you have to overcome your fears and stand up for your rights. After overcoming the difficulties and waiting 9 months, the author not only rejoined her course, but also confidently took a step towards justice. An erroneous correspondence from a former instructor turned out to be the key to justice. Sometimes it's hard to believe that one mistake can have such consequences. We hope that this story will serve as a reminder to everyone that circumstances are not always fair, but there is always a way to protect your rights and determine your own path to success. The third story is, neighbors call the fire department on my first fire, so we start 2 more. Last night I decided to have a fire with a few of my friends. I made sure to check the county website to see if we had a fire ban on. Everything was fine. We had a small radio playing at background. The level of noise was low enough that we could talk without having to raise our voices, and there were 4 of us, so not a loud occasion at all. Anyway, about 45 minutes in, we hear a loud diesel engine running just out front. I go to see who it is, and 2 men in full gear are walking towards me. I'm flabbergasted. They tell me one of my neighbors called in and said my house was on fire. I know exactly which neighbors they are because they've done this before, and I can see them through their back windows staring at us. So due to the fact that I don't have a fire grate, I can't keep the fire going. Because of the county bylaws, my fireplace is not suited for use, due to the fact that it's got some loose rocks. True, it's in rough shape, so we shut it down and I tell my mom. She informs me that we have not 1 but 2 more fireplaces, both equipped with grates. So we start 2 new fires. Within an hour, the department is back and they're ready to find me, but they see that everything's all good and up to code, so they leave. We proceed to turn up the radio and make the fires big, and keep going until 1 a.m. Since your neighbors witnessed your meeting with the firefighters, next time you can ask the firefighters if they have time for a short break to try hot dogs, freshly roasted corn, or marshmallows. Don't forget to say hello to your neighbors. Hope you enjoyed these stories. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Have a good day.